hurried past the sandbagged sentry post in front of the National Theatre. She tried not to make it obvious that they were together, at least not while they were walking down the busier streets. Her parents had been furious when they learnt of the relationship, and demanded that she break it off immediately. Her father had actually threatened to throw her out of the house, and she knew he would be as good as his word. She had been unprepared for such a violent reaction. Yet, unwilling as she was to defy her parents, she stubbornly resisted ending the relationship. Instead, she stopped talking about him and let them think it was over, but she carried on meeting him in secret. There were few places to go if they wanted to be together. Back in late autumn, when they had first started courting, they had gone to Öskjulit Hill, when the weather was fine. But now, in the depths of winter, their options were very limited. Checking into a hotel was out of the question, and so were the barracks. Once before they had resorted to the back of the National Theatre after nightfall. The building loomed darkly over Kvirskata. Like the huge outcrop of columnar basalt it was designed to resemble, though it was in fact no more than a hollow shell. Work had halted on the ambitious project 10 years ago with the onset of the Depression, and when the British occupied Iceland in 1940, they had requisitioned it as a supply depot, a role it had retained when the Americans took over in 1941. Now it was a popular meeting place for illicit lovers. "You're never to see that man again," her father had roared, beside himself with rage, and for the first time in her life he would have raised his hand to her if her mother hadn't intervened. She had given him her word, only to go back on it straight away. Her lover's name was Frank. He came from Illinois, and he was always clean and neat and smelt nice, and he had beautiful white teeth, and such gentlemanly, polite manners. They had talked of moving to the States together when the war was over. She was convinced her father would approve of him if only the old man could be persuaded to meet him. It wasn't as though she was the only one, as though their relationship was unique. At the beginning of the war, Reykjavik had had a population of 40,000, but since then tens of thousands of servicemen had poured into the town. Liaisons between soldiers and Icelandic women were inevitable with the arrival of the Tommies, and they rapidly increased in number when the Tommies were succeeded by the Yanks who, with smarter uniforms, more money, and better manners, were almost like film stars to the locals. Language was no barrier. The language of romance was universal. But such was the resulting moral panic that a committee was set up to deal with this scandalous state of affairs, which came to be known in all its manifestations as the situation. She didn't give two hoots about committees and the situation as she dashed across Kvirskata with Frank from Illinois. It was a chilly evening in the middle of February. The wind whistled around the man-made castle of rock, designed to resemble the elf palaces of Icelandic folklore. On entering the imposing theatre building, audiences were supposed to imagine that they were stepping inside a mountain, being transported to the gleaming halls of fairy tale. But for now, the sentries, huddled behind their barricade of sandbags, paid little attention to the pair who hastened round the corner, taking refuge from the street lights. She was wearing the warm coat she had been given for Christmas. He wore his army greatcoat over the uniform she found so glamorous. He was a sergeant with men under his command, though she didn't know exactly what this entailed. Her knowledge of English didn't go much beyond yes, no, and darling, and his Icelandic was no better. Yet, in spite of this, they managed to understand each other quite well, and right now she needed to talk to him about a matter that was weighing heavily on her mind. The instant they were out of the wind, Frank began kissing her hungrily. She felt his hands fumbling under her coat, and her thoughts flew to her father. If he could see her now. She heard Frank whispering endearments in her ear. "Oh, my darling," felt his icy hands through the blouse that she had bought from Jakobsen after New Year. He stroked her breast through the thin material, then unbuttoned her blouse, touching bare flesh. She remained passive, inexperienced in the ways of love-making, though she usually enjoyed kissing him and felt a hot frisson run through her body when he touched her. Now, though, it was freezing cold and she wasn't in the mood. Her father's fury loomed over her, and